Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
February 4, 2021, the Turbocharge edition. We begin with that story from the New York Times, as the consulting giant McKinsey has settled with 47 states, the District of Columbia, and 5 territories over its role in the opioid crisis, paying over $500 million or $573 million to settle investigations for its role in helping to turbocharge opioid sales. A rare instance where McKinsey is held publicly accountable for the wrongdoing it engaged in with its clients. The settlement is significantly huge for McKinsey because it shatters the distance that McKinsey argues that it puts between its advice and its clients' actions. McKinsey has for decades avoided legal liability from such clients as Enron, Swissair, and others. The records highlight McKinsey's close relationship with Purdue, and in 2009, the firm wrote a report for Purdue saying new sales tactics would increase sales of OxyContin by as much as $400 million. The significance of this was after the 2007 fine and penalty against OxyContin for its time contributing to opioid crisis prior to that time. And indeed, in a 2017 slide presentation, McKinsey laid out several options to shore up sales. So McKinsey was clearly involved in ramping up sales at opioid manufacturers, particularly Purdue Pharma. So big settlement. Next up, we now have the reason that Rosemary Verbreylik, the Donald Trump's personal banker at Deutsche Bank, was ousted. She was fired after an internal investigation determined that she had a conflict of interest in engaging in undisclosed activity relating to a real estate investment from a client-managed entity. She was left the bank but was permitted to resign. The Deutsche Bank's internal review concerned a 2013 real estate transaction between her and a company of which Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law and senior White House advisor, held a interest. The bank's investigation began after the New York Times reported that she and 2 of her colleagues had bought an apartment in a building that was also had Trump involvement. So conflict of interest takes down yet another corrupt banker. GameStop. We can't start talking about it enough, and the information is coming fast and furious. As it turns out, our good friend Roaring Kitty, Keith Gill, was a registered securities broker working for Mass Mutual. And it's one thing for you or I to tout the upside of a stock, but it's quite another for a registered securities broker to do so. And they have additional reporting obligations and disclosure obligations under U.S. securities law. So he's going to be looked at a lot more closely now, particularly considering the amount of money he made and perhaps even lost on GameStop. And that takes us to our good friends Robinhood, the platform which many of the Joe Q public traders utilized in the GameStop run-up. It's now facing more than 30 civil lawsuits in relation to trading restrictions imposed on it. Several groups of investors have filed suit in California, New Jersey, Florida, and even Texas, alleging Robinhood and its subsidiaries, by imposing restrictions on the platform, violated various laws, including breach of contract and fiduciary duty. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.